A genetically modified organism, or GMO, is an organism that has had its DNA altered or modified in some way through genetic engineering. GMOs can be defined as organisms like plants, animals, or microorganisms in which the genetic material has been altered in a way that does not occur naturally by mating or natural recombination. So although GMO is a blanket term for all organisms that are altered genetically, today I'll be specifically focusing on genetically modified foods. So basically, GM foods are created by doing things like choosing what pollen to take from different flowers to make them bigger and more vibrant. All foods have a natural variety, and we practice artificial selection by cultivating and breeding certain organisms to produce offspring with their most desirable traits. A good example is corn, in fact. Corn used to look like this. Crazy, right? But now it looks a little more like this. But honestly, would you rather eat that pathetic pea-looking plant or the hundreds of juicy golden kernels on our modified cob? Although GMO is a widely used term, it can be a bit of a misconception, as people have been modifying foods for centuries, since agricultural farming first started. A more suitable term is genetically engineered organisms, or transgenic organisms. This is when the most desirable genes of one organism is extracted and fused into another organism. Some great examples are commodity crops, which are used to make ingredients found in processed foods. Things like soybeans and corn, which have been modified to resist herbicides and insects. A very common type of modified crop are the Roundup-ready foods like sugar beets, alfalfa, canola, corn, and soybeans, which have been engineered to resist a brand of herbicide known as Roundup. In the early 1990s, the company that make Roundup injected crops with an enzyme made by microorganisms that are unaffected by glyphosate, the active ingredient in the dangerous herbicide. They did this so that they could sell the Roundup-ready crops as well as their weed-killing herbicide. Now the real question is if GMOs are bad for us. There's plenty of controversy surrounding this topic, but the truth is no, there is no scientific evidence that GMOs are bad for us. GeneticLiteracyProject.org considered over 10 studies, all which attempted to show that GMOs are bad for us and that consuming these foods could be detrimental to our health. These studies included GMOs directly linking to gene transferring, allergies, cancer, Alzheimer's, autism, and Parkinson's disease. The website, however, was able to prove wrong every study and stated that none of these studies proves or even persuasively suggests that GMOs can be harmful to human health. The majority are either obviously flawed or not scientific studies. The real issue with GMOs is one of ethical and cultural value. You see, the process to engineer or modify a food is extremely lengthy, taking years to create and breed and even longer to get them tested and approved for human consumption, therefore making it an extremely expensive thing to do. This means that the big companies creating these crops very closely guard the sales, growth, and even research done into their foods. The main reason that GMOs and GE foods are attacked so much is not necessarily because of the health risks, but the fact that we're putting something as important as food supply into the hands of a few very greedy and large companies. Another debate is that if a farmer was to save a seed from last season's harvest and plant it next season, however unintentionally it's been fertilized by a genetically modified version, which happens to be owned by someone else, then this poor farmer no longer has an organic crop and may also have a large company suing him for stealing their plant. This could then cause dire consequences for the farmer if perhaps he is in the GM-free market or sells certified organic crops. The other factor is that if we're modifying these crops to repel insects and pests, then what's to say that we aren't harming the insects we do like butterflies and bees? All in all, I think we should definitely be putting more money into researching GMOs and keeping a watch on the possible misuse of these advances by large companies, because, as there is with most new technologies, there's a certain risk of GMOs being monopolized or even weaponized. As well, that GMOs indeed are going to be a huge part of our future. With a climate that's constantly decreasing the amount of land we can farm on and a rising population, especially those lacking vital nutrients in third world and poverty-ridden areas, we need to seriously consider the joint farming of both organic and natural foods, as well as genetically modified and engineered, to increase the number of crops we can harvest and decrease the amount of water and energy needed to grow them.